Hello. All right. Everyone ready? Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. Today, we're going to talk about how you move from the Force.com IDE to Visual Studio Code. My name is Nathan Totten. I'm a product manager working on a couple of the developer tools here at Salesforce, including Visual Studio Code extensions. And I'm joined by Ali Leong, who is a senior engineer who helps build the Salesforce extensions for VS Code. Perfect. And of course, forward-looking statement, don't make purchasing decisions based on, only buy things that exist today. Something. Go ahead. All right, perfect. With that, I am going to let Ali take over and give you a tour of some of the cool stuff we have in Visual Studio Code for you today.
Cool, thanks, Nate. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. Today, we're going to be talking about why move to Visual Studio Code, what functionality is the same between the Force.com IDE and Visual Studio Code, and also, I'm really excited to present some new features that make it really worthwhile to change IDEs. But before we begin, let's see a show of hands. How many people here have heard of Salesforce DX or played with Scratch Orgs or the Salesforce CLI? Awesome, quite a few. So if you haven't, no worries. We're going to be covering some of these topics in this presentation. But if you have, you may have thought to yourself, well, I can't use Scratch Orgs, so I can't use VS Code. But we're here to show you today that that's no longer true. We've heard a lot of feedback that it's been difficult to adopt our VS Code tooling because it's been limited to Scratch Orgs. So I'm going to be showing some new features that we've added today so that you can use VS Code to develop against sandboxes or any other org. So first off, why move? VS Code is a modern IDE, and it supports any language. So we know that when you're developing Salesforce, you're also writing Lightning components, and there's JavaScript, CSS involved, and out of the box, VS Code comes with really great support for these languages. VS Code runs natively in any platform, so whether you're using Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can install it today and use it. It's free, and it's open source. So there are already a lot of extensions and plugins that are offered that you can install to help you do anything from code linting to source control. And it also comes with smart code completion and also a really awesome debugger. Our own extensions for VS Code are really fast and really easy to install. And we ship updates weekly, and those updates install into your extension automatically. So rather than having to wait for our 3 major releases a year in order to get the latest tooling, you actually get our latest tooling weekly and instantaneously, which is pretty cool. And we've made our Salesforce extensions open source, but they are still fully supported by Salesforce and actually developed by Salesforce. So they're really reliable. And as I mentioned before, you can now use VS Code to develop against any type of org, sandbox org included. So between Force.com IDE and VS Code, what's the same? And this is really important to us because we know that you've spent a lot of time and effort creating the processes that you use for your Salesforce development today. And we want you to keep being able to do the things that you do today. So whatever you use to move your code from org to org, you can continue to do so. For instance, if you use change sets, keep using change sets. You can also split up the metadata in your org using your existing package XMLs. But if you don't want to always be creating new package XMLs, the IDE also supports deploying and retrieving individual files or folders that contain files. OK, cool. On to our new features that make VS Code really awesome. One new feature is our improved source format, which is actually really similar to the old metadata API format, but with a few improvements. So one major improvement is that we break out custom objects and their child custom fields and layouts, et cetera, into their own individual files. And that makes them just smaller, easier to read, easier to manage. Here's a graphic. Oh, it's a little bit blurry, but it's depicting an individual custom field that's now been broken out into its own file. So one of the great benefits of breaking out custom fields and the other subcomponents of custom objects is that if you use source control and you're checking in, you're committing your changes, it's easier to tell what's changed. So for instance, if you made an edit just to a custom field on a custom object, and previously, if you commit that change, when you look back at your history, you see, oh, the entire custom object changed. But now with the new source format, when you look at your history, you can actually see that the custom object didn't change, and it's the custom field that's changed. Another time that this broken up source format is really useful is if you work in a team and multiple people are making changes at once. Previously, if you and a teammate were making changes simultaneously to two different custom fields on the same custom object, then when it came time to merge your changes together, you'd have a conflict. But now that the custom fields are in their own file, no more conflict. I'm also really excited to introduce the replay debugger. The replay debugger is free, and you can use it to debug your Apex. And you've probably used a debugger before with other programming languages, and the replay debugger brings that experience to Salesforce development. So you can use it to step through your code and to inspect the values inside of your variables. And if you've ever thought about transitioning over to the package development model using Scratch orgs, our VS Code extensions are really helpful for that because we already support that model of development in VS Code. And if you're not familiar with Scratch orgs, though, what they are disposable dev environments that are really easy and quick to sign up. And you take these environments and you develop your features and you test them in an environment that's all your own. In order to sign up a Scratch org, you will need a dev hub, and dev hubs are now available in any org, DE orgs and trial orgs included. So to recap, if you thought that our VS Code extensions weren't built for sandbox development, that's actually no longer true. And we're trying to build tooling that will support any process that you're currently using in Force.com IDE. And additionally, VS Code brings improvements like the new source format, a better debugger, and an easier transition over to the packaging development model.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali, for explaining that. I bet some of you thought I wasn't going to talk again and I was just going to stand off to the side. That's not the case. All right. Tough crowd. Perfect. Let's now move on to the demo part of our talk. So we're going to give 3 quick demos here. We've got a lot to show. We're going to move a little bit quickly, but we're going to do 3 things. First, we're going to show one of the ways. There are a few ways, but we're going to show one of the ways that you move from the Force.com, move a project from the Force.com IDE to Visual Studio Code. We're going to show you how you retrieve metadata as you've done in the Force.com IDE now inside of VS Code. We're going to show you how to write some code, add a feature, deploy it to the org, and then we're going to show off some of the cool tools that exist only in VS Code that don't exist in Force.com IDE for testing and debugging. So Ali's going to switch over here and kick it off with a project she's been working on. So the idea here is oops. Perfect. All right. So the idea here is Ali's been working on a project already to add some functionality to our Dreamhouse application. She's already done some work in Apex. She's written some a service, done some work inside of the controller. And next thing up, we need to work on some of the UI. So we want to switch over, though, mid-project to Force.com IDE. As I said, there's a few different ways you can actually move your project over. The easiest one, though, is to just take your package XML file and copy it over to a new project in VS Code and pull down your metadata. So we have a new project in here. that's created basically a regular SFDX project that you may have seen before with in the past. The difference is here we have a package XML file. So she's going to take that package XML that she copied over from Force.com IDE and paste it in here. Now, what she can do is actually just retrieve the metadata directly from the org. She's already authorized this project with the sandbox just to save a bit of time in the demo. She's going to pull that. It's going to pull that down from the org, and we're going to get the metadata here in just a second. Perfect. So, a couple things to note here. First off, you see the built-in source control inside of VS Code, which is really awesome. All the new files showed up as green. We changed the package XML. It showed up as orange. Makes it really easy to track what's happening, what's changing. The other thing to notice is this new source format. As Ali mentioned, we break now large XML files into smaller, into folders and into smaller files, making them much easier to keep track of, much easier to edit, a little bit simpler experience. We also do some other neat things with some of the other types. For example, static resources we actually take care of unzipping them and expanding them so that you can work with the JavaScript or CSS files directly rather than having to go through the cumbersome process of zipping, uploading, etc. You can just work in the native format, and we take care of all the magic for you. So now that we've got our package XML updated and we've got our metadata pulled down, Ali's going to use the built-in source control in VS Code to commit, and then we're ready to actually start with some new development. So the feature that Ali is going to add is she's going to add something to our Dream House application. She's going to add a walk score component. So this basically is something that tells you how far your property is from restaurants and things like that realtors and such and prospective buyers use. So she's going to create a new Lightning component using one of the templates. We have a lot of templates built into VS Code for creating things like Apex classes, triggers, etc. But she, of course, created a Lightning component, and you see we have all these files. She's going to edit the walk score component with some code. She's a super fast developer, so that was awesome. Save that, and then she's going to deploy that component. So you can deploy of course, using the package XML that you created before, deploy everything. But you can also deploy individual folders or files, saving time, deploying only what you need. You can do the same thing with retrieve only what you need. So she's deployed just that walk score component to our sandbox. She's now going to switch over, open up our sandbox, and make an edit inside of the org. She's going to open up our Dreamhouse app that's already installed and navigate to a property and edit the property page. Just something real quick, now that we've got that component there. So she's going to drag over that walk score and put it on the side there. And we see we've got our UI prototype ready. So she's going to save that page, switch back to VS Code, and open, and then right-click, noticing just on that single file, click Retrieve from Org, and we're pulling down just that one file. And in just a second here, you'll see that turn orange, indicating that it has changed. She's going to open up the source view, and we'll see here inside of VS Code, again, with that built-in source control support, we actually see the diff of that XML file, which is really cool. We can see that there was that change, adding that walk score, making things really easy to keep track of. Again, commit that right from VS Code, and now we're ready to go. So I had mentioned earlier, cool, yeah, so now we're going to move on to work on the back-end stuff again. So I had mentioned earlier that she had already started doing some work in Apex. She had built a service out for querying this walk score third-party API and added some functionality to our property controller. And like any good developer, she added a test. Everyone always adds tests, right? So she added a test, and we're going to run that test. She knows she's been having some problems. So we recently added in VS Code this UI you see on the side here for viewing all the tests inside of your project. You can run them right from that side panel. You see the red one for failing. Obviously, it turned red. If it was passing, it would turn green. And you see also in the CLI. So in the past, we could, of course, download our debug logs. We could look through that manually, see what's going on. Kind of not so fun, right? But now inside of VS Code, we have this replay debugger, which is really one of my favorite features. If you've seen it before, I apologize, but it's awesome, so we like showing it off. So she's going to open up that log, right-click on it, and click Launch Replay Debugger. And this is going to launch an interactive debugging experience where you can set a breakpoint and step right in, and you can see all the cool things you'd expect from a modern debugger as she steps through. She can expand the variables, see what values are set, step into functions, methods, etc., and kind of see what's going on so she can really narrow down the problem. So she's going to keep stepping through here and using our side variables. She's going to see that our walk score service returned a value of -1, which is an invalid value. So she's an awesome developer, so she's really quickly identified the problem. We have never practiced this at all, and she now knows what needs to be fixed, which is the SQL query was querying this address, city, state, and zip code. She's going to now put that zip code in there and click Continue. Right-clicking on that single file, deploy that file to the org, and switching back to that property controller test, showing off another cool feature in VS Code. You saw earlier how you could run the test from that side test view. You can also run Apex tests for the entire class or for an individual method right there on the top using a feature in VS Code that's called a code lens. And she's ran that test, and we see that it passed.
I didn't save.
Oh, it didn't pass. Uh-oh.
Let me redeploy.
All right. That's all right. It will pass. So she's going to save the file, deploy it, and run it again, and prove that it's passed. Yes. Awesome. Cool. So hopefully, I know a lot of stuff to cover, but hopefully you see some of the really cool things, how VS Code is really lightweight, really easy to use, and has some really neat features for you to develop with. So just wrapping up, I wanted to note most of the features you saw today working against any org are in preview right now. You actually can use it today if you're super excited. Go back to your hotel, start using it today. It will be in beta next week. We release on Thursday, so next Thursday this feature will be available as beta. We really want to hear your feedback. It's pretty much, I'll say the feature is pretty much done. It's very close to ready. We're calling it beta though because we want as many people to use it. We want you to let us know what you think. We really want to make sure we get this right. So there's a link there. All of our issues are on GitHub. We have it's open source. We have an open roadmap. We keep all of our issues and discussions there. If you have any feedback, open an issue or a feature request, and we'll definitely take a look at it, and we'll try to incorporate that as soon as possible. Next up, we have a couple resources. I'm not going to go through all these, but take a picture. Hopefully you can see that. Link to download VS Code, link to install our extensions, link to how to use the preview, and a few other things. And then also a bunch of Trailhead modules on the mountain there to get you started with DX and with VS Code and with all this good stuff. Finally, we've got a couple more sessions. Some metadata session today, pretty soon. ALM session really should be pretty good. CLI, another session on the CLI, and I have another session tomorrow, which is a repeat of a Tuesday talk showing a few different features of VS Code. If you missed that, stop by tomorrow morning, and Apex testing. Also, stop by the DX booth. We have a bunch more demos there. We're happy to answer questions, show off any more features. Allie and I will be around also to answer questions after the talk. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Allie, for the awesome demos, and enjoy the rest of your time at Dreamforce.